Good morning, everyone. We are live now, starting the meeting of the Cabinet, Monday, 7th of July, and the first item on the agenda is the apologies for absence. Councillor Pemberton, do you want to say something?
Chair, I was just going to say that before we start the meeting, today's the 20th anniversary of the greatest terrorist attack this country has seen, and I think it's appropriate as a public body that we should perhaps mark that with a moment's reflection and silence with your agreement, Chair.
Yes, and indeed, I was listening on the way in to the dreadful account of that day and what happened, and the memories that people have of that day. I remember it well indeed. I remember it because my children were living in London at the time, and I was very, very concerned about their safety on that day. So I'm happy to make sure that the Cabinet notes the occasion of the 20th of July, the 7th of July, rather, the 20th celebration, not celebration, the remembrance of the 7th of July, and that we remember it and remember what the impact was to so many of the people that were in London on that day. Thank you very much indeed for raising that one. Okay. Moving forward onto the agenda, the first item is the apologies for absence.
We have none.
We have none. And the second item is disclosures of interest. We are reminded of the need to declare the existence of any disclosable pecuniary interests and explain the nature of that interest. Has anybody got anything that they wish to declare? No? Then we move on to the minutes, to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of June. Anybody got any comments that they want to make on the minutes and the accuracy or anything else on the minutes? Can I therefore confirm the minutes? Are you, the Cabinet, all willing to confirm that they accept those minutes? Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to matters to be referred to Council. And the first one is under my portfolio, which is about local government reorganisation proposals and the preferred options. And the purpose of this report is to determine the Council's preferred option in relation to local government reorganisation proposals that will be used in the engagement with the public and other stakeholders. You will look at the Deloitte report is included in the report. That assesses the options set by government and ranks them and looks at them and comes to the conclusion that a two-unitary model meets the criteria best on delivery of public service, local place identity, stronger community engagement and neighbourhood engagement. And the results, that is what the evidence that we have before us up to today. And the results of the engagement will now go out, the engagement will happen and the results will be used to help inform the final decision of the Council. And we have to be able to submit those proposals by November the 28th this year. We have, for those people that have not had the chance to look in full at the Deloitte's report, it does show a lot of data that will be helpful to us in our eventual submission. Though a lot of that data will have to be made checked and defined. All the data so far shows that there is a difference in the economics and challenges in both the north and the south of the county. Academic research shows that bigger is not better, and there are many examples of existing county unitaries that have been through this process, and it is good to be able to learn the lessons from some of those councils. I know that we have our new head of housing that has come from an existing unitary, which is Solihull, which has been in existence since, I think, since about 1986. So it's those kind of questions that we need to ask about delivery of some of the services that are currently run by the County Council, and look at some of the way in which some of the existing unitaries have experience of running such services. And those are the kind of questions that will be put to for the engagement, but they're also the questions on which we will have to do a lot more research as we go forward. We want to be able to look and make sure that we've got the research on the different health and social needs, north and south. We've got to look at how some of the disaggregation of services will work, and look at some of the high priorities for our communities and our residents. So those are all things that will go forward. I want to be able to make sure that we've got a recommendation that will go to the council that reflects this. So I'm going to propose that we have a recommendation that says that the two unitary model, as outlined by the Deloitte report, is endorsed as the preferred option for the purposes of public engagement prior to a final decision in November to be presented to government in November 2025. I have written that down, so if anybody wants to be able to, we'll put that into the minutes, then I have got that in writing. So that is the recommendation that will be that the two unitary model, as outlined by the Deloitte report, is endorsed as the preferred option for the purposes of public engagement prior to a final decision being made by the Cabinet and being presented to government in November 2025. Thank you very much indeed. I will move that recommendation. I ask for a seconder prior to a debate from the Cabinet and any other input from anybody else. Marcia Eccleston, Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarifying, is that local public engagement?
That is the local public engagement that we will undertake ourselves. We're not obliged to do this by the government, but we are going to do public engagement ourselves. Obviously, once it goes to government, I understand that they will themselves also do consultation, but that is a separate exercise that they will undertake. So happy to propose this. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Coucher, second it. Anybody want to raise any issues on the recommendation and the reports that they want to raise before it goes forward to Council? Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say that I don't have a scientific basis for this, but certainly I've been having a lot of doorstep conversations, and I believe a lot of my colleagues have, and that is certainly coming across very strongly as a preferred route for our residents in the Stratford district. And so I would be very happy to endorse it.
And Councillor Curtis.
Yes, just reflecting what Councillor Coles has just said. When I was out campaigning for the county elections, it was the overwhelming preference of, I would say, 90% of the residents that I canvassed. And to be honest, I was quite surprised just how well informed residents were about the issue. So I think it does endorse their views. Thank you.
And Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, should it be endorsed by full council before it goes to November, and should that be added to the proposal?
Yes, if that's if you're happy to take that on board, I just assumed that it would be full council because that's the next step. But if we want to put it in to make it clearer, then fine.
Yeah.
Marcia?
Yes, I was just coming back to say that it will always say recommendation to council, but if that's what you would prefer as Cabinet, we can add that.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. Members of Cabinet will have seen Councillor Bromwich's email, and it is right and proper that there is a local engagement, and there will be engagement by residents. They will be interested in this. But in terms of an engagement, to get an answer that is informed, and I take Councillor Curtis's point that he felt his residents were informed, we cannot make the assumption that that will be the case across the piece. I would like to have some understanding of how we are going to frame the known unknowns, as was once said. So, for example, Deloitte say, fire service, we do not have any evidence how the fire service is currently run and therefore the potential disaggregation impact. Bigger is not better, a one size fits all. We do not have any evidence of how that's operating. I'll just get back to that. Send, we don't know how this is being delivered, and I am well aware that people too will be providing a piece of evidence. I think the point that I'm trying to make is that if we are going to have a valid and informed public consultation, and it is right that this administration takes a view that a bi-unitary approach is the one that they want to support, that is a legitimate case to make, and across all councillors there will be varying views on the best solution. But to ensure that the public can make the most informed decision, I would like some assurance that the contra argument and some of the known unknowns about how services are being delivered and the potential adverse impacts of splitting services or disaggregating services is included. And I think the notion that a single unitary, by definition, is more remote than a bi-unitary is not one that's founded. A bi-unitary could be as remote as a single unitary. People in Shipston or in Southam or in Ulster or in Bidford or in Studley or in Wellesbourne could feel equally remote and could have equally as remote a delivery mechanism for a South Warwickshire with a headquarters in Stratford, Warwick or somewhere in between. So I am really keen that we do give not necessarily warts and all, but certainly a balanced overview for residents in order that they can come to, and their response will inform members, certainly in the November meeting, although noting ultimately that there is an element where we're passengers in this, and this will be decided by central government. But I just want some reassurance that there will be some balance around that, because there are not a unanimity of views. Thank you.
Before I bring in Councillor Coucher, can I draw your attention to page 14 and page 15? On page 14, it talks about one of the specific sections related to engagement, and the interim plan stated engagement would cover, and it covers, I think, 6 or 7 points there about how that engagement and who would be involved in that engagement, including residents through consultation events in communities and running formal independent public consultation to gather views. The engagement process at 1.1.10 is that would be undertaken using the Gunnings principle and would take place in the period August to September. The final details are still being developed by the officer that will be doing that. He's currently on holiday, but he has already started that process and is very, very experienced in doing that. But it has been understood that before the engagement process commences, it is appropriate that the council expresses its preference to be used as the basis for that engagement. Councillor Coucher.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, I think we are on a journey and a process which obviously will end in November. I think it's really important that this council demonstrates that it's giving a lead, and I think we have a very, very useful Deloitte report that comes here. It's not perfect, it doesn't cover all areas, and it will need further areas of development, as you said, in relation to potential disaggregation of service or potentially what joint arrangements may come forward. But I think in terms of democratic accountability, in terms of the enormous difference between the north of the county and the south of the county, that there is very good reason for why we would go for two unitaries. And the third area that's not been mentioned this morning is where we're going to go in relation to a strategic mayoral authority, which is going to be very, very, very important. A single county could be linked up with Leicestershire and Staffordshire, which frankly would be to the great disbenefit of people here in Stratford district. A South Warwickshire unitary would have better relationships with Worcestershire or Gloucestershire or Oxfordshire going forward, because clearly the opportunity of going forward to become part of the West Midlands Combined Authority is not available to us as a result of the very clear message that's been given to us by the mayor of that authority. So we, I think, will be sending out a very clear message, but clearly we will want to take on view what other people's views are. I mean, I share what David Curtis has said on the doorstep. I think it was always unanimity that I had in relation to the canvassing I did very extensively throughout the Wellesbourne division, that the South Warwickshire unitary was much the preferred option for us as a county. And I think we'll need to make sure that we're putting forward that view. At the moment, in relation to the county council, it's still not clear how actually that county council is going to operate. We know that services like SEND are going to be subject to fundamental national review. Clearly we have got other services which also, I suspect, the county will have views in terms of how it works. We've got very clear requirements for Stratford and South Warwickshire, and I think the direction of travel is very clear. Thank you.
Councillor Coucher. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much, Leader.
And then Councillor Crump.
I appreciate Councillor Pemberton's concerns, but I think, and there are different views in the different boroughs and districts and county. I think it is important, though, to appreciate that the Deloitte report is an independent report, and it does come down, you know, there are reservations. It is not a perfect report. We do need information, further information, as Councillor Coucher has alluded to. But it is an independent report, unlike the internal report at county, and I think that is something that we do need to bear in mind when we are taking this further forward. And I think it is responsible, as the local authority, that we take those recommendations on board, and that we need to have an open mind, but we do need to move forward with some recommendations to the public. I don't think with this information presented to us, we can remain neutral. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, as it says in 1.2.2, the Deloitte report has been prepared to assist with the decision making. It's not in itself the submission document. We will have to do a lot more work, and there is, as the original invitation letter and the subsequent feedback letter from the government has said, is that we do need to undertake further work and further research. But we have to remember what is the primary reason why we as a district council should be taking these kind of decisions, and that is because we represent the community here in Stratford and South Warwickshire, the communities that stretch from Southam to Shipston, to Studley and all in between, that the most we should put that central to our decision making. The future of local government has to be a local government that works for the people it represents, and local democracy should be just that. It should be local, in my opinion. You know, we are looking for things that are saving money. Well, both options will save money, but we have to, in the end, also remember that we are here to serve people and the communities that we represent. The recommendation now before you is that, as amended, Councillor Crump, sorry, my apologies.
How can you forget me, Councillor Junid? Huh. Once seen, never forgotten, once seen, never forgotten, I've been told, but that's another issue. Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think yeah, I think the old cynic in me says, whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And unsurprisingly, yeah, I bet when the final report from the county comes out, they'll be recommending a single unitary. But yeah, just call me cynic. There's a couple of things I've got concerns about, and we raised this. It was part of our serving scrutiny as well, about sharing information. There's an agreement in place to share information with County Council and on a reciprocal basis. So I know this report has been done quite quickly, but the case in point was the fire service that was just mentioned. Yeah, obviously, I do know a little bit about the fire service, believe it or not. And I think there should be some commitment in the report to find out this information. And I think that's important. I'm not saying that there isn't anything in there, but I think that needs to be made more explicit so people are getting the accurate information. Secondly, the 1.1.1 on page 15, the engagement process using the gunning principles. Yep, again, no problem with that whatsoever. Just a little bit vague, would take place in the period August to September. Again, I know we've got a tight time scale, but consultations in August during school holidays are not brilliant. So again, if that could be noted, and again, some more clarity around the period of consultation, whether we get the responses. And it's noticeable quite a few councils don't reduce the number of meetings in August because of the availability of councillors, etc. So I think, again, if that could be made clearer when the period is going to be, and if there's more emphasis rather in the September period rather than the August period, because, like I say, just from a practical point of view, people are away on holiday for, during the period of August. And just on the final point, I think I'm quite well known around Southam. Been doing this job for quite a long while, and my residents are saying a different view. Whether it's because they live far away, 20 odd miles away from Stratford, they would find it easier if the new unitary was based in Warwick, which could be in either option. They felt they would prefer a single unitary, and some of the firefighters and some residents I've been speaking to can see the benefits of economies of scale. So that's just some points too. But again, if we can be transparent as possible, the point about the strategic authority that, again, Councillor Council mentioned needs to be clarified, and that is a difficult decision, and again, the lack of clarity. But I urge that information is shared and sought between the districts and the boroughs and the county council, that whatever proposals are meaningful and accurate and based on accurate information, and so therefore can be scrutinised. So that's my final point. Thank you.
I'm perfectly happy with the idea that we should have accurate information. I am a scientist, and data matters to me. Making sure that we have accurate data, making sure that people are properly informed is absolutely crucial as far as I'm concerned. But on the, you have picked up on making sure that we have a knowledge of the strategic authority. That's going to be quite a crucial part of this, and talks are ongoing as to exploring that, and we do need to get that clarified. However, on the timetable has been set for us. We don't have control over that timetable. The timetable was set for us when the government decided that in December, just before Christmas, that this reorganisation was going to happen. I've lived through, as a councillor, I've lived through probably four, but certainly three different rounds of local government reorganisation in my 30-odd years as a councillor. And I know all the arguments that have been put in the past. This is one that a government is, or rather civil servants, are determined that they will finish. I don't think we'll be given any leeway. But remember that there's very, very few councils across the country now, other than the rural shire districts, that are not unitaries. And there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from existing unitaries. Those that have gone through it a long, long time ago, like Solihull, which went through it in 1986, or those that have been through it more recently, such as Cumbria or Somerset. lots and lots of lessons to be learned and experience to be gained. And that is something that we will have to work on very hard in the coming months to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible, but also the services that are to be disaggregated are done in a proper manner. It is something that I am absolutely fundamentally believe in, that we make sure that we give the best services, frontline services, to the public that we represent. This is the preferred option for them to have an engagement in. It will then go forward for a lot more data to be gathered before a final decision is taken by the Council in November, and for a submission to be made, and then the government themselves will undertake a consultation on more detail. But on the making sure that we also, alongside this, continue with the talks about a strategic authority are absolutely fundamental as well, because the government have stated in the white paper, which I have a copy of here, 171 pages of this, only 3 cover local government reorganisation and the rest covers devolution to strategic authorities. And those are to cover powers to come to strategic authority areas that will cover transport and local infrastructure, skills and employment support, housing and strategic planning, economic development and regeneration, environment and climate change, health, well-being and public service reform, and public safety. And we also have to remember that alongside this, whether it's our preference or not, there are other reforms being taking place. And we have the ability to look at this with opportunity, because there are going to be health reforms, there's going to be also education reforms. We have to play our part in this and make sure that we get the best service and the best out of this for the people that we represent. So the recommendation now at the moment is that we go forward and endorse the 2 unitary preference, that will go out to consultation, engagement rather, with our residents. And I take your point about the August and September, but again, we are working to a very, very tight timetable, and I'm sure that the officers will make sure that that goes into the September and is not all done over August. So thank you very much for those points. It's very much appreciated. And now I put it to the Cabinet that Councillor Pemberton, do you want to come back at this point?
Yeah, Chair, I do. And I would reiterate the point. I mean, if you took localism to its logical conclusion, you wouldn't come up with a position, and you would just lay it out for the public. But that's not where we are, and it's legitimate for this authority to come to a view, which it does. But what I haven't heard is that in the engagement process, there is a commitment to showing the other side, the balance, so that the public can take an informed choice. I haven't heard a commitment that, whether you call it the known unknowns or the potential downsides, are going to be outlined so that people can consider that. If you're going to give that commitment, I'm happy on that. But what I'm hearing at the moment is you have a position, you will engage on that position and that position only. And I don't believe that serves the public well.
It is my commitment that both the pros and the cons will be put forward. It is we've been asked for a preferred option, and this is our preferred option subject to the engagement. And that is something that I have done an awful lot of research already on. I do urge all members, all councillors, to do the research, read the papers and make sure that they've done the proper research of all those councils. And I've been on a lot of webinars with some of those councils across the country, and spoken personally to chief executives and also leaders of those councils. I urge all councillors to make sure that they've done that work so that they are properly informed. And then what I would also urge is that as part of this engagement, that members of the public actually come and speak to their councillors and get that information from them, because that is sometimes the best way if you don't want to do things online yourself. But we as councillors must all be properly informed of all the arguments and all the justifications, both pro and con. So yes, you've got that is something that I would take for granted that we would inform that. We are not people that would just push things through without making sure that people are aware of both the pros and the cons. And the Deloitte report actually already does that and is the basis for a lot of the information that you can put to your residents. So we have a recommendation that I've proposed and has been seconded. I'd like to put that to the vote amongst the Cabinet. Are all those in favour? That is accepted. So thank you very much indeed. And on that, we move on to the next item. And this item is about a notice of motion on private management companies operating public open space, flood alleviation schemes and estate roads. And it is on 163. So anybody that wants to look at that page, the pages, and get ready for adding your information to the debate. This is something that is close to my heart because I actually brought residents of the pastures in Ulster to speak to this council. They presented a petition, but they also came to speak, and I spoke on their behalf. I can't remember how many years ago, but it was quite some years ago, about the conditions that were on their estate, about the way that private sector management companies were engaged and with the work and the problems that they had. I went back and did a lot of research as a result of that, and found that the council had actually changed its policy on provision of open spaces, and actually changed and supported the idea of private management companies in 2005. So I was able to follow that up. Since that notice of motion which I seconded in council, there has actually been a lot of movement in government. The Competition and Markets Authority that was referred to at the time has now been taken up and is now being considered in government. And I know that we have people here that have followed that the way it has been raised in Parliament. But Councillor Coucher, I will bring you on first, and then I think Councillor Gist wants to update us.
Thank you. This instability was obviously created by government over 20 years ago, whereby I think trying to alleviate the financial responsibilities for local authorities, but it has actually created terrific instability and also unfairness. And I know that many councillors hear from their residents about how I pay my council tax and I also have to pay management charges for my particular area, and that is really unfair. I'm very pleased to say that this council has now changed its policy, and that we will not be in future in any way encouraging private management companies to come on and manage areas, and that will be an exceptional situation rather than the regular and the rule. And I must admit, I attended my parish council only last week to hear a developer saying we'll be putting all of their land associated with that development into a management company, and I had to say to him, no, you won't, because this council now has kind of stopped that unfairness and that procedure going forward. Where this notice of motion, I think, is very helpful, and I'm very pleased that we've had it, is what can we do for those residents who currently are suffering under existing management companies, totally unregulated, who can more or less do exactly what they want. And indeed, once again, in relation to Wellesbourne, we've got a management company desperately trying to flog off public open space, and potentially people thinking, oh, we'll be able to build houses on these parks and areas, which is just totally unfair and won't happen, but it's created an awful lot of work for those of us in trying to make sure that we are protecting those particular areas, because these management companies do not have an interest in this district. They are purely interested by finance, and it is not to our benefit, not to benefit of residents. So what we've suggested in relation to this notice of motion is that we should set up a task and finish group to see what we precisely can do to try and ameliorate the problems which existing residents have. And certainly it is my recommendation that we actually do go ahead with that, because this is one way of certainly presenting through to our two MPs, because I think it may well require that we will need some legislative changes. And I know that Councillor Gist has been doing some work on that. Some of it may already be beginning to emerge, but I think we do need to crystallise that. And I think it is really important. So we have a recommendation here that we do set up such a task and finish group. We've set up in paragraph 131 actually the terms of reference for that task and finish group. But I think we'll need to have some structure there, because it's quite a very wide brief in relation to it, in terms of both taking evidence, but also looking at best practice of other authorities. And other matters, and I think we'll need to be more focused if we can do something in a timely fashion, and this doesn't go on for a long period of time. But I do think it will be really important that we do engage both MPs in the process, because I think certainly there will be matters in relation to national legislation which will be important. Thank you.
Can I bring in the Deputy Chief Executive just on one of those points about the remit of the task and finish group, just to explain one item, and then I'll bring in Councillor Gist.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I had the privilege of attending the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, and part of the debate there related to the terms of reference for the group. There was some concern expressed, and I think we've got sympathy as officers with this, that point 6 in the reference, which is collating a central record of all sites where a private management company is operating, would be quite a significant piece of work that perhaps had a lower priority than some of the work that Councillor Couch has spoken about. And we wondered if this may be either sort of given a lower priority or deferred until a later stage in the process, bearing in mind we're trying to get a timely report back within 3 months from this group. So I just thought I'd raise that.
And Councillor Gist. And then Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Crump, I noticed there was, I would say, disquiet's perhaps too strong a word in OSC for the amount of work and the time scale. I was looking, and the government are planning to consult on this particular issue by the end of this year. So I was looking at the proposals in the spirit of collaboration, because I think we all want to help sort this out for residents. And my thought was, and I appreciate that we might need a bit more work, that we should try and identify the developments affected and then speak to residents, because I know we all think we know what the problems are, but obviously residents can actually tell us what the problems are, so that when the government does come out with a consultation for how they're going to legislate, we're able to respond to it as best as possible.
And I understand that you've actually done and looked at quite a lot of what has been raised in Parliament about the consideration of the Competition Markets Authority, and proposing potentially to change this piece of legislation, which at the moment is the problem, one of the problems for us, in that we can't retrospectively change legislation. So it would need government legislation. We can do a lot on what powers we have, but we are limited by until the legislation is changed. Marcia, are you able to expand on that one?
Thank you, Chair. In the report, under the legal implications, the position's explained quite clearly, so I won't reiterate too much there. And I may even ask, if that's okay with you, Chair, that Mr Careford comes in on one point. The first thing to note is that we absolutely cannot look back. There are no powers currently for the Council to do anything about the management companies where we have entered into certain 106 agreements, etc. Absolutely not. The other point to note is looking forward into the future. Yes, there is legislation that possibly is being considered by the government around this issue in light of the Competitions and Marketing Authority's input and what they found in their policy study. But we don't have a timeline on that that's been specified, so I don't want to raise expectations on that either. So just want to be absolutely clear on that. On the middle point that was referenced about what we, the council, are doing now, I just wanted to be a bit clear about that, because I think there is an update to our local planning authority decision-making process and policy under Part L. And that was only quite recently, so I'm handing over to John just to bring in and clarify on that, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you. So we adopted supplementary planning guidance on open space, and that is to certainly do more than encourage, but you know, we can't mandate it, but we can certainly strongly encourage companies to offer open space to, in the first instance, the parish, because we think it's best that the parish owns and maintains the open space in the first instance, and then it would come to us by default. But as Mr. Eckerson rightly says, you know, we can't, and the report in section 5 does stress, we can't ban management companies. But from a planning perspective, land ownership is not an issue. The planning issue is the open space provided, is it being maintained to the sufficient quality, and is it, you know, in their perpetuity for public use? So it's, I think, yeah, expectation management is key, but it's absolutely right that as a council we are listening to residents who are concerned and struggling with the charges that are being applied to the open space that they're now residing on. Can I just, while I've got the floor as it were, Leader, can I just note in paragraph 5.1.1 there is a typo where it says agreements in the last sentence. It should say applications. So apologies for that slight error. Thank you.
And I'll bring in Councillor Pemberton, but this has been, you know, going on for a long, long time. And some of the, I mean, I know that I was present when one particular set of residents was discussing with the MP about what has happened on their public open space, and this needs a resolution. Absolutely needs a resolution as soon as possible, and we must get that message across to government. But meanwhile, we have to manage what has gone wrong on in the last 20 years within the district, within as far as our powers will allow us to do so. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. As members of Cabinet will know, I was the proposer of the motion and drafter of the motion, and it was actually deliberately kept quite wide to allow as much latitude as possible to be able to do work on this. This is a situation that we all agree at its very kindest has ended up with the law of unintended consequences, but is a situation that is, and it's not solely an issue in this district, it's around the country. And the monitoring officer is quite right to highlight that the silver bullet, if there is one, is legislation. Who knows when that legislation may come forward? Yes, a commitment towards the end of the year, but there is an awful lot going on with government at the moment. It may or may not get on the list. So the purpose of this motion is to set up a group that looks at the art of the possible as we currently stand, and to try and develop a toolkit that residents can use. And you're absolutely right, no, a management company cannot be forced out, but there are certain model agreements that allow for, in essence, a referendum by residents to actually change management companies. So there are mechanisms within some of these agreements to apply pressure. If a management company is not meeting its contractual obligations, it's about how we can provide some advice to residents and ward members about how they point that out to management companies in discussions with management companies. there are areas where it may be that we can be more effective in our enforcement. For example, if a public open space is not being maintained or it's not been built to spec. So there are, accepting that legislation is the ultimate, we're not in control of that. The purpose and the reason for it being quite wide, and I do take on board the question of it may be difficult to collate, it may or may not, but to actually get to some practical measures in a toolkit. And you know, a number of us are engaged with these management companies and discussions, and I and the MP have been party to discussions with one of the major house builders and probably the leading management company. And there are ways to bring pressure to bear. So it's about getting that knowledge out and learning what other people are doing up and down the country. So I think I take them on board. I think members need to be doing some heavy lifting with these task and finish groups. It's not just a case of getting officers to do this stuff. But I would, it's clear that you're going to go with this, but I think I just wanted just to get that out there, that we understand, or I certainly understand, and I think Councillor Junior, as the seconder, understands there are constraints, but that doesn't mean to say we can't be smart about how we do this and how we support residents. And that's, I think, what we're looking for, and finding, you know, what's worked elsewhere, what we can do, how we can be smart, how we can support residents, and then hopefully government comes to the rescue further down the line.
And I'm going to bring Councillor Rolfe in, and I certainly would like to be able to, at this stage, actually say that I move the recommendation, because I feel so strongly about it. But also, I will bring to your attention that in the last year's budget, we also brought forward a Green Spaces officer who can help with this process going forward. So that is also something that we need to note. Councillor Rolfe. And then Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I personally am delighted this is coming forward. I had a meeting with a group of residents on a public open space in my ward on Friday, and it transpired that one of my residents is paying £43 a month for the maintenance of his one parking space, literally one parking space. I think the other issue that we have is not just about the increased cost, but the fact that the work isn't being done. I mean, I've got a whole area in one of my wards where the work is not done, and it's not done well enough. It's not done regularly enough, and people are paying more and more. So I'm not putting my name forward for the task and finish group, but I can easily give you details, whoever it chairs that group, of certain management companies in my ward. Thank you.
Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, I fully support everything that's been said. I've got a large number of new estates in my ward, and I have an awful lot of issues that are current. But it's very timely that the new S106 enforcement officer is in place, and I had an email off her last week saying she was now looking into 5 of the new estates and into the S106 agreements, and she's also sending out the new Green Spaces officer to survey and monitor the open spaces. So we should have some good feedback. Well, I certainly will have some good feedback by the time of the task and finish group.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Crump. Councillor Curtis, did you go first, actually? I think you were first.
It was just a very agree with everything that's been said. It's just a very small query, really, on the wording in 133. I think there's a sentence missing. Whilst the subgroup of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, OSC, something, given the issue, I think, can that be corrected? Does it?
Could you just tell us again? Was it 1.3.2?
1.3.3. What's the
3?
subgroup? Yes.
The Deputy Chief Executive will comment.
I think the paragraph was perhaps a little clumsily worded. It is okay. The inference is that it allows the task and finish group to call on a wider membership where there's experience within the council, or should be led by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. If there are other members with expertise, and this was a point that was brought out at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, they were keen to not be limited to their own membership.
Thank you for the clarification, Tony.
Okay. Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it was a quite a large debate about this on Wednesday, keep on Wednesday, Friday, and obviously the other things as well is the flood alleviation schemes that we've talked about the state roads, we talk about public open spaces, but I think the flood alleviation schemes are equally as important as well. There's a couple of things that I think come forward on that. Yes, we agree. We think the membership of the Task and Finish Group should be primarily drawn from Overview and Scrutiny, but not restricted to Overview and Scrutiny Committee members on this occasion. And we're not saying this creates a precedent either, but we think it's a wide enough subject. And bearing in mind who proposed this, and it's coming from Cabinet, we feel on this one occasion that we would be willing to have non-OSC members on this Task and Finish Group. A couple of things on that. We realise that it should be a fact-finding exercise in order to provide evidence really to support the wider political and national debate, which, as Councillor Gist said, needs to be done by the end of the year. So we appreciate that, and obviously the timescales are quite tight, as in the similar report where you're doing the consultation in August and September. What we feel this is, it's a large piece of work, and we have concerns about the subsequent demand on officer resource to support this. We've also got another significant Task and Finish Group going on to do with housing, and then we've also got the small matter of local government reorganisation, which I'm sure will be taking officer time as well. So what we find that we could potentially have difficulty meeting the 3-month deadline, especially for a comprehensive report, whether we felt as we would produce an interim report within the 3-month timescale, and then a fuller one as soon as possible after that. But we feel that the 3-month timescale, especially the amount of work, limited officer resource time, and if we want to make it meaningful, we think we could be struggling to do a full 3-month full report within 3 months. We're not trying to make excuses, but I think we think we could get some headlines out, but again, I was criticising the previous report about lack of information on the local government reorganisation, about the lack of details and vagaries. I think it'd be hypocritical if we started producing a report that was slightly vague and unclear. So I think we can do something, but I think a full report in 3 months is optimistic. We also felt that, again, if we could just have some final clarity around the terms of reference. So again, if we can narrow these down a bit, then we can concentrate on areas and don't go down blind alleys and use valuable officer time on those as well. I think that would be helpful. But we agree in principle. We also felt that the ward member guide would certainly have merit, and we also talked about other areas where ward member guides could be helpful. But yeah, this would be particularly helpful because I know, many councillors have similar issues throughout their wards, and it is frustrating both for them and for the residents as well. So a user guide of rights and responsibilities and who can do what, etc., and what we can and can't do would certainly help clarify the position and give a consistent position as well, because sometimes people say, well, I've spoken to X councillor and they've said this, and then I've spoken to Y councillor and they've said Y, so we get some clarity around that. There's lots of merits in this.
Thank you very much. Before I bring in Councillor Coles, it will depend upon the abilities of the chair to bring this forward. I actually chaired after the climate change notice of motion, I chaired the Task and Finish, and we were finished within 3 months. It really does depend upon having a very, very clear and tight guidelines on what you will undertake. Might I suggest that it's not only about what the District Council's existing powers are to do what we can now, but also get, what would be done differently if the law was to be changed. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I think the strength of this is that it does have a definitive timeline. If what is required doesn't fit into that timeline, I think we need to rewrite the timeline with as much done as possible within the 3 months. I think it's very important because I think we all know, even as parents, as soon as possible can be stretched into centuries, and that it is actually a task and finish, not a task and finish as soon as I can, because speaking as a parent, I've been rolling it out for decades. So I think that having this timeline is extremely important, and I think we really want more than headlines after 3 months. I think this is an extremely important piece of work, and we do need to give the priority it needs to this. So if it can be broken into, we anticipate we're doing this within 3 months, but this will take longer, that would be helpful, because then we can actually see what we are having back. I would rather have a timeline that says this, and this will be done, and then the end of the timeline is this isn't done, but by after another 3 months or something like that. Because, as we say, it is important, and we need to know what data and recommendations to deal with this extremely serious issue are coming forward for us to consider and see what we can put into place to change things.
I'll ask Councillor Gist to come in, and then I will wrap up and move the recommendation. Councillor Crump, did you want to come back at all?
Yeah, it's just a couple of points on that. Whether it was misunderstood or I've misheard. No, we didn't not commit to producing some information. We were saying about the practicalities of the 3 month time scale, and it might be done in that place, but we are putting out, that's the point of having a scrutiny committee, to point out any potential flaws or issues with a certain project or certain timescale. With 3 months, we are saying there are potential other demands on officer time. Some of the areas are quite big, so we needed more clarity on what to include and what areas we're going to do, because, like I say, we could be going down blind alleys. And we were saying that we wouldn't produce a full comprehensive report, but if it came to it, we would produce an interim report within the 3 months timescale, and then produce a fuller report at a later date.
Okay, it might be, I'll come back on to item 7, the proposal, proposal 6, as to that might maybe one of the ones that will take time, or whether or not we have to decide whether or not at this point it is necessary. But rather look at the ones where the problems are is our priority. Councillor Gist, and then I'll draw to a conclusion.
I think that this is really a matter of just us communicating with each other. I think until Task and Finish Group have had a chance to sort of look at this properly and identify sort of how they're going to prioritise the proposals, and then we need to talk to each other. My concern is that this legislation, if it is retroactive, could be the most important piece of legislation for our residents. What Councillor Pemberton was talking about, what councillors can do on the ground, could be really affected by this. So it's vital that we are able to respond to the consultation, in my opinion. And if the workload is just too much, then we need to talk to each other so we can prioritise and get it right, because it's obviously we all feel the same about it. So.
Okay, I'm moving a recommendation, and this is a recommendation to Council, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee establish a task and finish group to investigate, report and identify solutions in respect of private management companies operating public open spaces, flood alleviation schemes and estate roads across the district. Now, I will do a slight alteration on the remit. The remit is set out in paragraph 1.31, but it has been raised that the proposal number 6 should not be the priority. It's more making sure that we engage with and take evidence, understand the legal landscape, identify good practice and successors, engage with MPs, establish the position of the County Council, and then make recommendations going forward. The collation could be something that could take a little bit longer. So that is, if we establish that one as a slightly less priority for the task and finish group, that means that we would get a report coming forward, and then the work can carry on, making sure that we get that collation ongoing as the Green Space Officer is able to do that moving forward. So I'm putting that for the Monitoring Officer. Can we just bring in?
Just very quickly, I may have missed it, forgive me. I didn't know who was proposing and who was the seconder.
I'm the proposer, and Councillor Coucher is the seconder. Okay. Can I put that to the vote for the Cabinet? Are you all in favour of that as amended? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your consideration on this matter. And we're moving on now to item number 6, which is the replacements of windows at Elizabeth House, which is on page 171. And this is to consider the allocation of additional funds to the window replacement at Elizabeth House. And the crucial point is that this is additional funds. This is not questioning the budget, the amount that was put into the budget earlier the year. This is the extra funds that will be needed. If I ask for somebody to start this one, it comes under the portfolio of Councillor Adam.
Thank you. Yes, so this is a proposal for additional budget item for the delivery of replacement of windows at Elizabeth House, and as Leader says, it's not to reconsider the original 1.6 million that's in the budget. This is due to the increased cost of the installation. The view is that this is still the most cost-effective way to deliver the proper maintenance and upkeep of the building, which is one of our significant assets. It also allows us to mitigate the climate impact of running the council building, a building that we're inevitably going to be in for a number of years yet, irrespective of what comes up in terms of LGR. And it will also have the positive impact on staff in allowing to control the working environment of all members of staff in the building. Due to the limits on the budgeting process, it will have to be considered by full council. So I'm recommending that we support it on that basis.
So you're moving that recommendation?
I am, yes.
Okay. I will second that recommendation. Anybody that wants to raise any questions on this one? This will go to Cabinet, to Council, sorry. So the recommendation that will go to Council is that an additional budget of 361,000 be allocated to the window replacement scheme, and that delegated authority be given to the Deputy Chief Executive to implement the decision and to procure the services as set out in the report. Have we got any comments that anybody wants to make? If not, I will move this by the Cabinet. All those in favour? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on next to the playing pitch strategy, and we have 2 members of the public who wish to be able to comment on the playing pitch strategy. This is on pages 231, and it is seeking endorsement of the playing pitch strategy, it is something that is new to this council. We haven't really had a playing pitch strategy before, and this is bringing that forward for your consideration. So would you members of the public like to come forward and say what they would like to say? And you have 5 minutes in total, and I understand that you've agreed to allocate the time between the 2 of you. So would you like to introduce yourself and then say why you want to kind of come and talk on the playing pitch strategy?
I've written out a 3-minute speech, it's quicker. Okay, so I'd like to say good morning, council members. I'm Jed McCrory, chairman of Stratford Town Football Club. I'm here today to reinforce why multi-sports and pitch sites are so vitally important to Stratford and the wider district. and why they must be protected for the long-term benefit of our sport in our community. Since my time at the club, we have proven our commitment to become a pillar for the community, using football as a force for good. We are a catalyst for social change, education and economic growth in Stratford-upon-Avon and Warwickshire. Our programmes, excluded from the current pitch playing strategy assessments, serve thousands within our community. Examples of this usage on the artificial pitch are Warwickshire Schools football, rescued from near collapse to winning the Nationals for the first time and recognised with a National Turnaround Award for their endeavours. Let girls play, over 3,000 girls trained for free. Disability and Veterans Football, a National League winning disabled team and vital mental health support through sport. Our Education Sports Academy, 25 hours a week, diverted at risk youth from exploitation, now going into apprenticeship programmes for the first time. These types of programmes rely on our artificial pitch, yet their usage isn't factored into the PPS. Without investment, we risk breaking commitments to our tax-paying communities, which will affect social behaviour and badly affect the communities we serve. Stratford Town's football club's economic value to the district through an independent review generates nationally 5.4 million, with 2.1 million directly benefiting Stratford-upon-Avon. Many historical sites, hotels, bars, restaurants benefit from the football club. Stratford Town FC also partners schools, NHS, police, army and fire service with free tickets to support our community enhanced goodwill. Stratford Town FC is ranked 15 in England's top sustainable football clubs. We're a hub for 2,000 plus weekly visitors. Demand now exceeds supply and availability of our all-weather pitch. Stratford Town is the only non-league member of the United Nations for our sustainability and community work, all achieved through our passion and an all-weather pitch. A replacement 3G pitch isn't a luxury, it's a necessity to prevent turning our community, the vulnerable and our children away. This is our community club. It is a safe investment for all-weather pitches due to the sustainability of the club and its green credentials. It protects and supports existing programmes. It boosts the local economy. Club visitors go on to visit the town centre and pay for parking there. Advances council priorities, youth engagement, health and crime reduction, as well as the proven environmental credentials of the club. This also continues the vital work of the United Nations. This PPS should be about legacy and recognising the facilities and the needs of current providers. Stratford Town FC is a beacon of pride, but without your action to ensure that sports pitches for community use receive financial support for maintenance and replacement when required, none of the current pitches or those that are planned will be able to meet the ever-increasing needs of our community. To conclude today, I'm here to ask the Council for financial support in relaying our artificial pitch and exploring a second 3G facility, a critical investment to sustain and expand our community's lifeline.
The monitoring officer would like to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the representations that you're here to hear today, it's about the playing pitch and the facility itself. In regards to what the gentleman has said, just be mindful of what you've heard today.
Okay. I believe the 3 minutes is are you, can you just got a sentence to mind?
That's fine. It's just that is relevant to the PPS.
Thank you so much for coming today and putting your case forward.
No worries.
It is appreciated. Okay. The other member of the public that wants to put forward their case. And you have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay. Good morning, council members. I am Mick Parsons, an independent sports consultant, and I've worked previously with Coventry City, Blackburn, Oxford, and currently working with Deloitte and the DCMS on the independent regulator reviews, and also currently working with Stratford Town Football Club, as I met Mr McCrory 18 to 24 months ago. I'm trying to work out where this is going on the playing pitch strategy from the point of view that when you look at the strategy outlay, you have Studley with 7,000 residents having a 3G pitch, yet Stratford you have 30,000 residents, and again only one 3G pitch, which currently is basically needing renewal. The benefits that Stratford put to this is the fact that the 40 hours used per week, which equates to £4,000 of money a week and £160,000 per year of free usage for these kids and
Councillor
elderly to
Gist would
benefit.
like to just come in at this point. Yeah.
Is my understanding, Leader, that we're looking at the playing pitch strategy for the whole of the district and how it fits in with the South Warwickshire local plan, not specific sports clubs?
Yeah, it is a strategy for the whole district that we are looking at.
I understand that totally, but my point is that Stratford as an area has become one of the biggest areas for sport, as Nuneaton was years ago in North Warwickshire, and you have the opportunity to help these kids with the area that you have and the population that you have to be able to help them move forward.
The Deputy Chief Executive would like to come in just to be able to explain exactly what the context is of this strategy.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, what you're being presented with today as a Cabinet for endorsement or otherwise as you see fit is the playing pitch strategy, which has been prepared using a standard methodology by consultants on behalf of the Council, and that piece of evidence will go forward to support the South Warwickshire local plan. Within that, as Councillor Giss says, it does cover the whole area, and that would include the Stratford Town Football Club. I think probably in terms of the representations we've heard so far, if the Stratford Town Football Club feel that that process hasn't been properly conducted, if they made that clear to us, we could have that as a consideration. But the detailed sort of matters about the uses of the pitches are probably something that are for a discussion outside of here. So if we could have some clarity around that, I think that would help the Cabinet make a decision as to whether they choose to endorse the strategy at this time.
Councillor Coucher. A monitoring officer first, and then Councillor Coucher.
Sorry for interjecting. It's just that the gentleman hasn't had his full 2 minutes yet.
Okay, no, my apologies. I haven't got the clock in front of me, but you haven't had your 2 minutes, so please complete, and then we'll bring in Councillor Coucher.
Yeah, thank you. No, my point is that as an area and the population of the area, you're supposed to have so many pitches per 7,000 people. And at the moment, Stratford has one 3G pitch, which is for 30,000 people, which is getting overused. It's getting worn out quicker. And who replaces that? Who puts that in place? So these kids and adults, there's over 50s, there's the specials, there's dementia groups, all sorts that are using these facilities that are getting worn quicker and quicker and are not being utilised. And when that pitch can't be used anymore, what happens to Stratford? That's my point.
And thank you. So Councillor Coucher will come in because this is under his portfolio, which is about the planning area, and then John Careford, who is Head of Development, will come in afterwards.
I was just trying to clarify if got to the end of the 2 minutes, that was all. So
Sorry?
We're at the end of the 2 minutes, that's all I was trying to clarify.
Yes, you've had your 2 minutes, yes.
Trying to keep up.
Councillor Coucher, and then John Careford, Head of Development, will come forward.
Chair, I think we were as a council, very concerned about our lack of policy in relation to, or lack of strategy in relation to the provision of sports and playing fields. So one of the, I think, manifesto commitments that we had 2 years ago was that we would actually come forward with a strategy. So I'm very pleased that strategy has been prepared. It's a really important piece of work in influencing certainly the South Warwickshire local plan going forward. South Warwickshire local plan may well involve substantial increase in population for this district, and as part of the infrastructure that we need to serve both existing population and new population here is to ensure that we've got proper sports provision, and as Councillor Giss has said, right across the district. This is not just a Stratford thing. This is for every single community as well, where we know we have got great demand from a variety of sports for particular facilities that are required. I think this is a really quite useful document here. and I know one that we'll be taking into account as we come forward with our preferred options for future development. Because not only do we need new schools, new roads, new hospitals, and new other facilities, we also need additional sports provision. Not something which this council can just provide itself. It will have to be provided as part of development packages coming forward. So the strategy is set out here. As it's in terms of the recommendation here, is to support the emerging planning policy, particularly the South Warwickshire Local Plan. It's also to help with assessing planning applications where they come forward to ensure that we're actually seeking from developers the proper financial contributions towards sports provision. It contributes to the infrastructure delivery plan, which this council is very keen now to prepare and to use, particularly in relation to how we use SIL money for the future. It also assists with levying, as I've said, spending developer contributions. It also helps in terms of prioritising maintenance and the management of facilities as well, because that is also extremely important. And it helps us secure external funding where appropriate, particularly from Sports Council and other potential sponsoring authorities as well. So it is a good piece of work. It's something that I would certainly recommend that we endorse, and I obviously put forward the recommendation.
The Head of Development, John Kerford.
Thank you, Chair. And it's great to hear the passion of local clubs who want to provide for local people to engage in sports. I've just been looking at your Appendix 1, which is the summary of the document, and just to give members some comfort. So in Section 3, which is artificial grass pitches, you've got a table, and it identifies that of the 12 3G pitches, 9 are good quality, 2 standard quality, and Stratford Town FC's class as poor quality. This pitch meets a large amount of football demand, but is in need of resurfacing work. So, that point, I think, does acknowledge the fact that the current status of that pitch. Then moving through, it looks at the impacts of the new standard housing methods, so the demand facing the district, and it says that from a playing pitch perspective, it needs 4.3, the equivalent of 4.3, or how you'd have a 0.3 of a pitch, I'm not sure. 4.3 full-size pitches, but then when you add in the additional population demands, we've got a deficit of minus 8.8. And then the overall recommendations are identifying that whilst there might be a need in sort of north of the district, it does say other potential sites in areas of highest need. So I think if you've heard today, Stratford Town is clearly highest need, but I think I'm comfortable that the strategy itself has picked up those concerns, and as Councillor has said, as we evolve through the South Warwickshire Local Plan, we can use this as evidence to ensure that we provide this essential infrastructure, and then it's a tool that can, excuse me, help clubs bid for grant funding as well to provide anything on top of that as well. So hopefully that's useful.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I would like to pick up on, is that not only are we going to use this as an instrument as part of the South Warwickshire Local Plan, but that we will help prepare grants where appropriate to various bodies as well. And having this evidence and having the data will be very, very helpful in that. And I know from my own experience how, doing things in Ulster, how being able to access grants, having the data behind us is very, very valuable indeed. So Councillor Pemberton and then Councillor Grocott. Councillor Grocott.
Thank you,
Councillor Pemberton. Thank you, Leader. Yes, I was very pleased to hear from the public speakers coming forward how the club is supporting women's and other demographics such as disabled and people from disadvantaged backgrounds. It's always very welcome to get people into sport. I was coming more from the reference from my portfolio, which is the environmental and neighbourhood services, which is the way the council's active community strategy ties in with this, because obviously we've been talking about it from realms of this inventory of facilities that we've got, where they are, what we need to be investing in to bring them forward so that we support our communities. But there's a more deep-rooted thing where we have certain demographics and communities that will not be going into sports centres or joining competitive team sports. But we do need to be making sure that going forward with our development and our planning, that we put ample facilities forward for people to support the health and well-being of our communities, and which is where we need to make sure that we are actually having these facilities within the new communities coming forward and not just in existing areas which can be quite well served already. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make some observations, and I think there are two strands to this. There is the strand around the football club and there's the strand around the strategy. And actually, in some respects, Councillor Grocott hit the nail on the head in terms of where I might have some observations to make about the strategy, in that she used the word inventory. And I think the strategy is probably a start point. But if I start with the football club, what I'm hearing is a plea from the football club to work with the district council and the county council to be a key partner in the delivery of a number of strategies which are far wider than being a non-league football club. So, historically, this council, under a previous administration, wrote off a loan, supported a 3G pitch, and I think it would be fair to say at that point Stratford Town Football Club looked very different as it does now.
Councillor, yes.
I'm not. If you'll let me follow it through, I'm not.
We are talking about two different things here.
But I was going to link it to the strategy.
No,
yeah.
we are already having discussions, and we've got to keep those discussions separate from this particular strategy, just to make sure that we have, don't
I'm not going to stray into
matters. So, Councillor Gist, do you want to come in at this stage and then come back to Councillor Prim?
It's kind of a point of order again, really, because all of us must have lots of people in all our wards who would like better specific sports facilities. And if there is a defect in this strategy, then I'm sure Councillor Coucher would like to hear it to see how we're not likely to address that. But I could have an army of people from my ward in a very rural area who would like to bring forward. I know Bishop Sitchington need a new sports pavilion, for example. And if this strategy is defective, then yes, please tell us about it.
Yeah, we are making sure, we want to make sure that in the South Warwickshire local plan, there is the ability for this council to be able to make sure that any development that happens contributes through Section 106 financing towards sports and facilities, and making sure that we have health and well-being. Can I also remind you, we have a lot of other strategies that are not mentioned here. For example, we have the active community strategy and others. And it's making sure that we link all that. At this stage, we are having discussions separately about particular cases, but we're wanting to make sure that this is an overall strategy that is taken on board by the council to make sure that we fully implement this through the South Warwickshire local plan.
Chair, I fully understand that, and I was about to make the link with the active community strategy, that it is not just the provision of playing pitches of whatever description per se that will achieve our overarching corporate goals. The point I was trying to make is that there will be key partners, the football club being one of them because of the work it's doing with education, with children who are struggling and are getting a better outcome. And I could share examples from my own ward of kids who've gone through their programmes. But the point being is that what I'm hearing here is a plea to be part of that. What I was then going to...
Councillor Coles?
Councillor, I think we all see your passion about supporting various things. We all have that passion for all of our wards. This is an overarching strategy for
I was
the whole
going to come to
district,
that.
and I really think we get what you're saying, but I think we need the discussion about the playing pitch strategy, not the results that will fall from that once it's in place. What we're discussing today is the strategy.
I understand that.
For the entire district, and I really think we need to focus on that.
And I am coming to that focus. I wanted to do some scene setting here. And yeah, you're right, I am passionate. I speak as a Brummie boy who was going off the rails and went across the road to a running club and ran for his country, so I know the value of sport. So, but if I look at the pitch strategy, what we do need to understand is, does it cover all the bases? One area that came to light through my own ward is, to what extent are we factoring climate change into how we have analysed need and location? The example being Big Meadow in Bidford, which in 10 years' time could be unusable because of flooding from the River Avon. It is, at the moment, identified as an asset. Now, to be fair to officers, they've picked that up. But what we do need to understand, and perhaps take the strategy as a starting point, to understand that with our inventory, are we actually ensuring that that inventory holds good throughout the whole of the plan period? So, sorry.
Just on that one, it is actually, and as you will well know, it is a fundamental part of the one of the original priorities and one, underlying principles of the South Warwickshire Local Plan is that it will take on board the impacts on not only the mitigation but also the adaptation to climate change. It is absolutely fundamental to part of the South Warwickshire Local Plan.
Okay, but the strategy identifies Big Meadow as an existing good quality asset, did not pick up that that is an asset that is at risk. It is therefore not illogical to ask officers to, as they go forward, consider, are there any other assets that might similarly be at risk? You know, Bidford is not the only community with a river course nearby.
And again, that will be part and parcel of the ongoing debate and data that will be gathered as part of the South Warwickshire Local Plan.
Okay. The other areas we just to touch on, about the quality of the pitches. My understanding is, as we get towards the end of the decade, there are rules changing around the construction makeup of 3G pitches. So moving forward, these rubber infill pitches are not going to be how you move forward. How does the strategy address existing assets that will need to be upgraded to account for emerging environmental legislation? So I think what I'm just trying to point out is that the strategy is a starter for 10 in the sense of it's better to have a strategy than no. However, I'm just trying to highlight that there are some areas, and the partnership with significant sporting organisations and their input seems to be something that needs to move forward as well. So those would be my observations. Better to have a strategy than none, but I think there are potentially more pieces of work to be done.
Yes, and I take that point because that is part, as I say, part of the South Warwickshire Local Plan. We have to do that. The Head of Development, John Kerford, wants to come in at this point.
Thank you, Leader. Just to give members some further comfort, so yes, this strategy is the position now. Obviously, the South Warwickshire Local Plan is looking to run to 2050, which is a very long time. We will be reviewing the evidence strategies on a more regular basis than this, so it would pick up Councillor Pemberton's concerns, should the situation change or technology move on. I think it's fair to say that our previous strategy got a bit long in the tooth. There was a reason for delaying this new one because we wanted to pick up the work on the South Warwickshire local plan, and it's tied in very nicely with the new housing numbers, because if we'd done this strategy a couple of years ago, we'd have to be doing it again now anyway, because our housing numbers have significantly increased. So just to give members the comfort that, yeah, I can't say it's going to be in 5 years' time, but 5, 10 years' time, we'll have an updated strategy. So that will pick up the changes, the position then, and then that evidence will inform the local plan. So it's a bit of a sort of ongoing fluid feast, but as Councillor Pemberton said, this is a good strategy for now. It's up to date, and it's the very best evidence to move us forward to start with the South Warwickshire local plan.
Yeah, indeed, it is, as set out in 1.7, a key piece of evidence to support the general open space and recreation policy in the South Warwickshire local plan, and will feed into the work of the infrastructure delivery plan and the concept master planning and viability work for, and it is for the whole district, and it is absolutely fundamental part of moving forward on the South Warwickshire local plan. Councillor Crump, I believe you wanted to come in.
Yeah, again, we talked about this in depth, and funny enough, one of the members of the committee on Wednesday during the break said, "Oh, I wonder, we spent a lot of time on this. I didn't think we'd spend so long time on it." Well, my answer back was it is an important part, and it provides significant evidence to part of the South Warwickshire local plan. I think it was right we talked about it. There's several areas we talk about, future-proofing it. Councillor Pemberton touched on about the EU changes to the 3G pitches. So again, it's important that we take those into account. So we're talking about ones that I think there's many significant ones that got quite good maintenance at the moment. But if these particulates, I think rubber particulates, are not going to be available, there's a potential problem for those ones who will then suddenly go from being a good pitch to a poor pitch. So I think we need to future-proof that, and whatever we design that comes forward takes that into account. And again, future-proofing and sustainability links to the climate change panel, where we can make pitches future-proof. There's nothing worse, going back from my old experience when I used to play sport, when I used to chase Stanley Matthews around the football pitch, it was that long ago. In the winter, on a normal pitch, we hope for a not too cold night the night before, because the pitches were either frozen and you couldn't play them, or it was like dancing on ice, trying to chase a football, or if we'd had heavy rain the night before, it was almost like playing water polo rather than football. So if we can have pitches that are sustainable, and bearing in mind climate change. I think whether it was in the report or I missed it, is the potential conflict between playing pitches and housing land. So whether that conflict needs to be taken into account, or whether, because sometimes the best ideal place to have a playing pitch would be suitable housing land, and then sometimes the pitch gets shunted to somewhere else, which is probably not so good. But again, if we can take those into account, look at conflicts, I think this accessibility as well is also important, linking into the South Warwickshire local plan. In terms of accessibility, in terms of car parking or actually getting there, or whether it's on a bus route, but also accessibility to people with disabilities, or as Councillor Grocott said, there's people who don't necessarily want a formal club to go to exercise, but some areas, some less formal sports areas, which have like a mugger, multi-use game area, which is free to use and accessible. So I think that is quite important. We emphasise that because that has particularly benefits on health and well-being, mental health, exercise, obesity, etc. So I think there are lots of things in this report, and I'm glad there's a commitment that the playing field, public open spaces, public playing PPS areas are going to be reviewed on a regular basis, because I think, yes, perhaps the previous strategy was a bit long in the tooth, a bit like me. So that commitment is healthy and good. So I think it's I'd say, we're on the right roads with this. And I think there is some more work that needs to be done so that the South Warwickshire local plan has proper, meaningful and accurate evidence to make its decisions on. So, just pointed out some things that could potentially need some improvement. But, as we said at the meeting, we endorse the strategy.
Indeed, the PPS was very, if it was not even complete, let alone long in the tooth. But one of the points to bear in mind is how this fits in with our management plan overall and the council planners overall. And 5.3.1 points out quite a few of the issues that are aligned with the council plan as a whole. And I think that's making sure that we take that on board. But it is for the South Warwickshire local plan particularly. So we now have a recommendation yes, do we have a proposer for this, Councillor Coucher? Do we have a seconder, Councillor Grocott? And we have the recommendation that is on page 231, and that is that the playing pitch strategy be endorsed to support emerging planning policy, to inform the assessment of planning applications, to contribute to the infrastructure delivery plan and inform long-term use, amount, type and location of facilities, to assist with levying and spending developer contributions, to inform ongoing maintenance and management of facilities, and to help secure external funding where appropriate. Are you all in favour of that recommendation going through to Council? All in favour? All agreed. Thank you very much indeed. At this point, I'd like to be able to have a 5-minute break because we've been going for a little while and it would be helpful to all of us. Thank you very much. On the agenda is the capital outturn 2024 to 25 and capital slippage, page 241 to 260, and this is the portfolio of Councillor Curtis. Would you like to outline the summary and the recommendation, please?
I will indeed, Leader. Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank Nicola, who is sitting on my left-hand side, for the comprehensive report and appendices. And the report provides the Cabinet with details of the provisional capital outturn 24-25. The most significant slippage items and amended budgets are detailed in points 231, table 3, on page 244 of the report, and also in appendix 3 on page 259. 1.22 gives a summary of section 106 and SIL monies for capital projects being held by the council. And that's shown in appendix 2 on page 255. Actual expenditure for 24-25 was 760,106 and 2.2 million for SIL, including committed and spent funds of more than 1.3 million for affordable housing, which I think we should be very pleased about. Any approved slippage will be monitored and reported as part of the 25-26 capital budget monitoring reports. The evidence base, 3.1, the draft outturn position has been prepared by comparing the actual and accrued capital expenditure against the budget for 24-25. Cabinet should note the outturn report, appendix 1, page 249, records the slippage against the budgets as they were set and reported through 24-25, whereas Appendix 3 on page 259 reports the slippage amounts against the heads of service responsible. And Cabinet will see that the total slippage is recorded correctly as £4,905,530 in both appendices. I'm just going to pick up a comment from overview and scrutiny. Bullet 5, reserves need to be spent properly and slippage kept to a minimum, as this meant that timescales had been wrongly set or unexpected delays had occurred. Well, yes, I absolutely agree. Slippage in July 2022, under the previous administration, was 13.9 million. Slippage in July 2023, slippage in July, oh, sorry, have I shocked you? Slippage in July 2023 was just over 11 million, and it's come down to less than 5 million this year. So I absolutely agree with the comments from overview and scrutiny. It does need to be kept under control, and I'm very pleased to see that we've made significant progress. There will always be slippage. Sometimes projects cannot be delivered in a timely manner or in the timescale that we would hope. Yes, details of some of the more significant variances are shown in points 211 to 216 on page 242, 243. And again, one of these has been, or a couple of these have been picked up on overview and scrutiny. 2.116, Evesham Place, when this scheme is completed, and I believe it's going to be January 26 now, is that correct, Councillor Coles? Yes, that's good. And when that is completed, it will offer a net saving of around £100,000 a year on B&B accommodation, which isn't the most suitable type of accommodation for those most vulnerable in our community anyway. So there'll be a financial gain from that, and we'll be offering better accommodation. Just looking at point 7 on page 246, work continues in the current financial year to ensure that as many projects as possible are delivered within their intended timescales. There has been some uncertainty expressed over capacity to deliver some key projects and priorities. And with the uncertainty surrounding local government reorganisation, it is essential that we move at pace on these projects. And thanks to sound financial management, and I'd like to thank Mr. Barl and all the members of the finance team, we are in a fortunate position. We do have additional reserves that can be used to help deliver these projects in a more timely way. I think that was all I had to say, really. So I propose the recommendation that, I'm happy to take questions, obviously, but I propose the recommendation that the capital budget for 25-26 be increased by £4,905,530 for slippage, as listed in Appendix 3, financed by the capital receipts as budgeted for in 24-25.
Do I have somebody that will second that, that recommendation? Councillor Coles. Anybody that wants to make any comments or questions?
Actually, Leader, can
Councillor Curtis.
add one comment as well? Councillor Keithley at Overview and Scrutiny also asked a question on a negative figure in the... it's on page 256. There is a negative figure, which is slightly unusual, and as Nicola Reynolds has said, a well-spotted prize to Councillor Keithley for spotting this. If I can just read Nicola's explanation for this. The negative 87,000 contras against the two lines above it, leaving a smaller negative amount of 28,000. The 28,000 shortfall against the committed spend is covered by 32,000 that was due to be repaid to the Stratford District Council by Warwickshire Police and Crime Commissioner. This amount was the first tranche of the police premises contribution for Gaydon, Lighthorn, so an S106 other bodies amount, which had been paid over to them last May ahead of discussions. The PCC agreed they would return the funds, would invoice them, but they did not want to physically pay us back until they had signed the MOU for the community hub. So the additional £32,000 hadn't been transferred. It has now been paid to SDC as soon as the memorandum of understanding was signed in May. I'm more than happy to circulate that written explanation, but I hope that will clarify the point. Yes, I will, Councillor Coulson. I'd like to thank Nicola for that. But I'll circulate that written explanation. Thank you very much, Leader.
Councillor Pemberton, I think you wanted to say something. Okay. Anybody, any other questions? No? No, nothing from anybody else.
Thank you. Thank you for the comprehensive report there, Nicola. Thank you for the comprehensive report there, Nicola, and well presented by the portfolio holder, I may add. Just a couple of questions, and I wanted just to pick up, before I just ask some specific questions. So you've highlighted the potential for some challenges around capacity to deliver projects moving forward. Was I correct in picking that up?
I'd slightly rephrase that. I think that we are aware that we have a limited lifespan. We're not going to be sitting here in 2 years' time, so clearly there is an urgency to deliver any of the projects remaining, and we do have some additional reserves that can be used to buy in additional resource to help us deliver those. I think that's a better way of phrasing it.
I'm happy with that phrasing, but I take the point. So the question that springs to my mind, you say there is some reserve capacity. How far along the road are we in terms of a plan, in terms of identifying those projects? What projects are at risk? What projects aren't going to be delivered within the LGR timescale and therefore should be put to one side, or not, as the case may be? And how do you envisage moving forward sharing that information with both your cabinet colleagues and wider members? In other words, a sort of project update, outturn kind of report. Is that envisaged?
Councillor Curtis, and then I'll wind up on this matter.
Certainly, thank you.
Specific questions, if you check.
I'm coming on to this in one of the other reports, but Mr. Burrell is currently undertaking a mid-year spending review, and when that spending review is completed, that would enable us to, I think, answer those questions more directly.
Okay. Basically, that was what I was going to say, was that these are ongoing already.
But of course,
the questions have already been asked.
Well, it's a
thank you.
Not being party to those discussions, it's a legitimate question, having heard that, to bring forward. A couple of items I just wanted to get some clarity on. around some of the slippage. There's a million and between 1.2 million pounds worth of slippage on affordable housing, section 106. The portfolio holder and I have discussed and are both on the same page that it is a never event that we return S106 monies to developers. We spend it, we're not at risk. I've looked at the appendices, we're not at risk, but I am interested to understand, are there any themes emerging around the slippage, particularly of the section 106 projects? Are there lessons we can learn? Are there things that we can do to have the pace that the portfolio holder rightly is looking for?
I think the
head of development, John Kerford, also wants to come in. I don't know whether, would you like to have Councillor Curtis say first? Yeah, okay.
I yield. I think, and I'll be happy to take further advice on this from both John and Nicola. My understanding of affordable housing is that we are not the delivery body. We rely very much on working with other partners to be able to deliver those projects. Clearly, we can try and work with other partners, and maybe there are ways that we can put pressure on other partners to help deliver those projects in a more timely way. And perhaps we can stress that there is an urgency to this now. But unfortunately, we don't control our destiny in that respect. But John, would you like to come?
Thanks, Councillor Curtis. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That, and I think the landscape for affordable housing has become much more challenging and complex in recent years, with a lot of RSLs perhaps not seeking to acquire sites because they're focusing on refurbing their own properties and so forth. So there is that wider context. What we are alive to, and Councillor Pemberton may not know this, but we've set up an infrastructure working group internally to oversee 106 spend. That group's met, and we've got some actions to that. So we've got much better oversight, and this is Councillor Couch's instigation really to try and ensure that we're not at risk of losing any money. We're not at risk. We have got some spend deadlines coming up, I think, next year. So now's the time to start working with partners. As you say, Councillor Curtis, we don't deliver ourselves, but it's working with partners to ensure we can find programmes to spend that money, because we are not going to lose it.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis, are you moving that recommendation?
A specific question, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes.
If that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, please.
And I'm glad to hear, and I'm assuming that's an officer group, the infrastructure. Cool, okay. Just one on the reconfigurations to Elizabeth House to enable leasing opportunities, which is a slippage and an amended budget for £500,000. My understanding is that the previous leasing partner is no longer interested. So the question for me about that is, does this budget and the reconfiguration, are we talking in terms of a specific reconfiguration with a partner in mind, or is it a more broad? I suppose I wanted just to understand that, you know, if we're going to spend this £500,000 on reconfiguring it, we're going to be able to cast our net widely enough to be able to get a partner to come in and occupy the building. So I just want to try and understand that. And again, that might not fall under Councillor Curtis, but it's highlighted in his report.
The Deputy Chief Executive can give an answer to that report.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we've taken the opportunity to reconsider sort of the future of Elizabeth House with local government reorganisation coming on ahead of us. And as Councillor Curtis said, Mr Burrell, the Head of Finance, is currently looking at an interim sort of financial review. We'll pick that up as part of that, about whether it's still appropriate to take that initiative forward, and we'll report back to that in due course. But we are mindful that that budget, the reason for that budget is no longer here, and we just need to review that.
Thank you very much appreciated. We've had Councillor Curtis move that recommendation. Councillor Coles, are you happy to second that? Then are the Cabinet all in favour of that recommendation? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on now to the Capital Budget Monitoring Period 1 to 2, 2025-26, pages 261. And this again, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. That, I just did mean to say that in the previous report on page 245, 242, it should say reported as part of the 25-26 capital budget rather than 24-25. Thank you. So, moving on. So, this is just for the, as it says on the tin, periods 1 and 2. Table 1 gives the opening position at April 1 of 6,000, sorry, I beg your pardon, 6 million.
And I should have said right at the very beginning of the meeting, if their alarm goes at 12 o'clock, it is a practice alarm, but my apologies on that one.
Thank you, Leader. So, yes, this report provides the Cabinet with details of the capital budget monitoring for the first two periods, April 1 to 31st of May 25. Table 1 gives the opening position at April 1 of £6,337,083, which does, of course, correspond to the remaining accumulated estimated capital receipts and capital grants. 1st of March 2025 in the outturn report we've just looked at. The report only covers periods 1 to 2 in the current financial year. I'm happy to take any questions, but I propose the recommendation that the position on capital expenditure and income for the period 1 to 2 of 25-26 is received, and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet or the portfolio holder. Thank you, Leader.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Coles? Or Councillor Gist, whichever one you wants to go. Okay, Councillor Coles on this occasion. Are you all subject to any other questions? None? Then are you all in approval? Okay, all accepting. Thank you very much. Agreed. Bye. Moving on then to the next item, which is the draft revenue outturn report, which is page 279 to 296. And again, this is Councillor Curtis.
My laptop has just died. If I can just turn it back on. Oh, I'll go manage without. And Jessica Lale has prepared this report, for which I'd like to thank her. So the summary is to provide members with the revenue outturn position for the year ended 31st of March, and to note the allocation of funding to earmarked reserves. 1.3, yes, the final budget monitoring report of 10th of March predicted a favourable outturn position of 1.4 million. The actual outturn position was a favourable £2,226,395, an improvement of £762,395. And the main differences to the outturn prediction are in respect of investment interest, investment rates remain higher, salary savings and services achieving better than predicted outturns. Turning to point 152, table 1 gives an explanation of the main favourable and unfavourable service positions. And again, two of these have been picked up by Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is very helpful that they've gone through these papers in detail. I'd like to thank them for that input. The most two significant are the unfavourable positions in planning and enforcement of 427,635, relating to a reduction in income from large planning applications, and 243,921 unfavourable position in off-street parking. Against the overall budgeted income of, I think it's 3.2 million from parking, obviously it's not a massive amount as a percentage, but at the same time, it is a concern. I've raised this concern with Mr. Burrell. We do seem to over-anticipate our income from off-street parking, and that's something I think we need to consider going forward. There are, I think, one of the problems with off-street parking is that there are so many variables taking into account. There is the decline in town centre shopping offer. We know there is the high street decline generally across the country. What specifically we can do about that in Stratford, there are a lot of problems around that. Weather plays a really important part. If we get a wet bank holiday weekend, it can have a really catastrophic effect. So it is down. It's very difficult to predict exactly, but I think it is something that we do need to look at. The earmarked inflation reserve stood at 1.5 million on 31st of March, but given the reduction of inflation to nearer the Bank of England's target of 2%, and less volatility in the markets, as proposed last year, Mr. Burrell has agreed that 1 million of this reserve can be released to help fund some of our policy priorities. And I'd also ask Cabinet to agree that a favourable variance of 2,226,395 is added to the general fund revenue balance. Point 110.1, notification of write-offs. I understand they are within the expected parameters. Looking at the reserves, I mentioned the mid-year spending review, which we're undertaking at the moment. All heads of service and others who hold reserves and underspends on successful growth bids have been asked as part of the mid-year spending review to provide a detailed explanation of when unused funding will be spent and for what purposes. Clearly, some reserves, such as Wellesbourne Airfield, need to be retained, absolutely. And we're not sort of suggesting for one moment that all reserves do fall back in. But where there is no longer evidence of need for reserves to be held, I will be recommending that those funds fall back into the general reserve and can inform our 25-26 budget discussions. But as I say, that will all be subject to the mid-year spending review that we're currently undertaking. So there are 5 recommendations on page 279, which I'll read out. One, that the draft 24-25 outturn figures and the explanation of variances be noted. 2, that revenue slippage of £116,935, as set out in paragraph 19, be noted, be approved or amended. 3, that the amount allocated of £952,232 to earmarked reserves be noted. 4, that the favourable variance of £2,226,395 is added to the general fund revenue balances, and that the write-offs contained within paragraph 110.1 be noted. Thank you very much, Leader.
And you're moving that recommendation.
I now make those
have we got a seconder? Councillor Gist has indicated this time that she will second that. Any comments, Councillor Crump?
Thank you, Councillor Junior. Yes, I think Councillor Curtis has covered a lot of the things that we raised. I think the points, the significant one was the one on the planning one where 427,000, I think it was, 635. I think the members were seeking the cause of this. When was this first known and reported? The proposed actions in relating to this and whether it was likely to be an ongoing issue, and also potentially what the implications would be both financially and in relation to planning, and if there's issues with the large planning applications, are there any implications for the 5-year housing land supply if planning applications are not coming forward as anticipated? So I think we would like some clarity and answers about that, and hopefully Councillor Catcher or Mr. Kerford's got those details. We've touched on about the Section 106 monies. We talked on about parking income. One thing that we should have perhaps pointed out to you is the fact that 1.3, the budget monitoring position on the 10th of March 25, I appreciate that was probably started to be collated in January 25, probably finished in February 25, and then report comes out. there was a big difference from the proposed, the forecast favourable position of 1.4.5 million to 2.25 million, so a 52% increase in the favourable. But this is from a financial point of view, it is good. You potentially got more money than you have, and it's better to be 50% that way rather than 50% the other way. So there are some pros and cons with that. So, but again, that was a sharp increase. And talking about parking income, we do tend to be erring on over optimistic, and perhaps whether the budget, when it's set, needs to have more prudence built into it, because this isn't the first time we've been spoken about this, and whilst on a 3 and a bit million it is only around about 7 or 8%, it's because of the size of the budget, it does make a material difference when you've got almost £250,000 unfavourable balance. It's fortuitous that we've got high interest rates at the moment in the balances, so that £250,000 in the grand scale of the schemes isn't particularly material. But if council was struggling in terms of its financial position, a sudden unexpected variance of £250,000 on a budget that consistently underspends or underperforms, and we appreciate the reasons why that, there could be, perhaps there should be something looked at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pemberton, and then Councillor Curtis can wind up, and then we'll move to the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I noted when the laptop failed, Councillor Curtis said he was going to blag it, so no change there then. Just a quick question. We've repaid £665,000 in respect of unspent local authority housing fund. I appreciate that might be not something that you can directly answer, but I would be interested in understanding if we've received a grant. In my very simple Brummy boy way, I'd expect us to be spending it. And so the notion, a bit like Section 106 monies, of having to give money back to central government when it's so terrible at giving us money in the first instance, just sort of jars. If not through Councillor Curtis, I would separately, perhaps through the portfolio holder, be interested in understanding how we were unable to spend that fund money, if that's possible. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis, are you able to just give that assurance that you can come back afterwards?
Yes,
or do you want to kind of
certainly
respond?
I think I did raise that with Mr. Burrell, but unfortunately I can't remember the answer. But I will certainly come back to you on that, Councillor Pemberton. Just referring back to a couple of other things. Yes, interest rates, income, it is very difficult to predict. And in fact, I raised exactly the same issue with the Section 151 officer at County the other day, where the expected income was, I think, £4 million from interest, and the actual achieved was £15 million. So it is difficult to predict. I think, were Mr. Burrell here, he would probably suggest that it's far better, and this is the answer I had from Mr. Burrell as well, sorry, it was from Rob Powell, sorry, that it's far more prudent to be cautious in predicting the income we're going to get from additional interest. And then if there is a windfall, that puts us in a much more favourable position. I would just add that there is some comment that without, or there's been an implication in previous meetings as well, cabinet meetings, that without this additional interest, we would be in a very parlous position. However, if we deduct our investment interest of £2,254,587 from our total favourable outturn position of £2,226,395, we find a total adverse outturn position of £28,192, which on an total annual expenditure of 65 million, it's a deficit in the region of 0.04%. So I think the council's finances are in a pretty sound position. So, yes, Leader, I've made those proposals. I think they've been seconded. Have they been seconded yet? Or?
All those in favour in the Cabinet of the proposals? All accepted. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, which again is in Councillor Curtis's portfolio, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2025-26 on pages 297 to 312.
Thank you, Leader. Another report from Jess, so thank you very much, Jess. This is to update Cabinet on the position of the Council's revenue expenditure at end of period 2, 31st of May 25, together with an estimated net outturn for each service for 25-26. Again, it's very, very early in the year. 1.3, items mentioned below the services that currently show or are anticipated to have the greatest variances. A full breakdown of the Council's services is included within Appendix 1. A further breakdown by category is in Appendix 2. Appendix 3 shows the amendments to the agreed original budget. And Appendix 4 lists the current earmarked reserves. To note, this now includes a recycling volatility reserve. And this new reserve of £500,000 will help stabilise the expected income budget from sale of recycled materials by mitigating the impact of market volatility. We live in a very uncertain world. The price of oil rockets up, plummets like a stone. All of that has a really a significant impact on the gate fees that we can actually get for our recyclate. So I think it's very prudent that Mr. Burrell has proposed that we put that additional reserve in. The expected outturn position, period 2 position, estimates an outturn position of £385,068. I don't think we should be too concerned by that at this stage. Like, the estimated outturn position for the Council at the end of last year was expected to be an unfavourable 161,000. And, sorry, let me read that again. The estimated position for the Council at the end of the year is expected to be an unfavourable position of 161,000. However, the same period last year showed an expected unfavourable position at the year end of 357,000. But as reported, in the end, we had a favourable variance of over £2 million. So I think we need to be very cautious. I wouldn't take anything from this second period report. And I don't think there's anything really significant in here. The write-offs 3.1 are, Mr. Burrell assures me, they were in the expected parameters, primarily a result of personal bankruptcy or moving on. But also the write-offs are the actuals for periods 1 and 2, plus a year-end adjustment for the end of the period year. And 4.1.3, the shortfall in off-street parking has already been noted and discussed. So the recommendations are that the actual net variance as at period 2 and the estimated revenue outturn for 25-26 are received. Any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet portfolio holder, and that the write-offs contained within paragraph 3.1 are noted. Thank you, Leader.
And you're moving that recommendation.
Those recommendations.
Who's going to second that recommendation? Councillor Coles? Or Councillor Adam? Fight it out between yourselves. Councillor Adam. We'll take Councillor Dunn this time. No, thank you. Any comments or any questions on that? Councillor Pemberton.
Just to say that I think it's a really smart move to have an equalisation reserve.
Thank you.
You know, there are lots of volatilities and it's affecting the revenue from the MRF. I think that's an eminently sensible move, and as a responsible opposition, fully support it.
Thank you.
And are you all willing to accept those recommendations, all on approval? Great. Thank you very much. Moving on then to number 12, which is the annual Treasury Management Review. And again, it's Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. So, different officer. Thank you, Katie, for preparing the report. It provides members with annual Treasury Management Review of activities for 24-25. I'd like Cabinet to note points 1.3 and 1.4 on page 313, outlining all members' responsibilities. Notably, 1.3, the regulatory environment places responsibility on members for the review and scrutiny of Treasury management policies and activities. And 1.4, this Council confirms that it has complied with the requirement under the Code to give prior scrutiny to all of the above Treasury management reports by the Cabinet before they were reported to full Council. Member training on Treasury management issues was last undertaken on 14th of June and 4th of October 2023. I raised this as a slight concern at the Member Development Working Group on July the 1st and suggested that some refresher training would be helpful to members. And I thank the Chair of the Member Development Working Group for allowing me to bring that forward. 1.6.1, interest rates remained high at 5.25% through much of the first half of 24-25, and even with 3.25% cuts through the year in August, November and February, the bank rate at the time of this report was 4.5%. In May, there was a further reduction of this is obviously after this report has been published, but there was a further reduction of 0.25%, taking the base rate to 4.25%. But the interest rate on our bank funds remains at 10 basis points below base, i.e. we're currently getting 4.15%, which is a pretty good rate of return. 1.6.2, the average level of funds available for investment in purposes in 24-25 was 83.6 million, up slightly from 79.9 million in 23-24. These funds are available on a temporary basis, and the level available was dependent on the timing of the precept and business rate related payments, the receipts of grants and progress on capital programmes. So that amount in that figure does go up and down, obviously. But we are getting a good rate of return on that, hence the additional income from interest. 1.6.3, interest earned on Treasury investments in 24-25 was 4.25 million at an average rate return of 5.03%, giving us that excess. 1.173, the Council remained internally borrowed to fund its capital investment up to 31st of March, and it's highly unlikely to require external borrowing really for the remaining period of this Council. And again, I think that's a good reflection of the very sound financial position that we find ourselves in. 1.82, there is a slight error in dates, and I thank one of my colleagues for spotting this for me. The report should read, the actual position at March 2025, not 2024, is 4.75 million. The proposed slippage for 25-26 is 4.9 million. This then aligns with the capital outturn report already presented, page 242.2.1, slippage of 4,905,530 is added to the 25-26 capital budget. So that's just, I'm afraid there's a slight error in the dates, and my apologies, I should have picked them up when I first had these reports. So that's my lack of scrutiny on that particular date, I'm afraid. Evidence base, the Council employs services of MUFG Corporate Markets, formerly the Link Group, who advise on Treasury management and investment. They issue interest rate forecasts. We will be having, I think our next meeting is going to be September. Yeah, in September to review that. 8.1, the investment policy. The Council's investment policy is governed by MHCLG investment guidance. 8.2, the investment activity during the year conformed to the approved strategy, and again, the Council had no liquidity difficulties. Final point, the investments 8.5 held by fund managers. We use ABRDN. I think they've now gone back to calling themselves Aberdeen. Yes, they were Aberdeen at the time of this report. They are now Aberdeen again. External fund managers to invest the majority of our cash balances, and the performances on cash balances of 55.66 million was 5.25% against a benchmark return of 5.03%. Only a small percentage, but I think it amounts to about £200,000 or £300,000 additional income. So it's all, as I say, every little helps. So I propose that the actual 24-25 Prudential and Treasury indicators detailed in Appendix 1, page 319 are approved, and that the annual Treasury Management Report be received. I think
Thank
that's
you
me
very
finished,
much.
Leader.
And
Thank you.
do I have a seconder? Councillor Gilcott is going to second that this time. And if there's any comments on that? If not, we put that to the vote. And all those in favour of this recommendation? Thank you very much indeed. Agreed. Moving on now to the Housing and Customer Services portfolio, item 13, which is the Energy Efficiency Grants, Warm Homes Local Grant, pages 337, and which is under the portfolio of Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations coming with this paper are that the revised and reduced allocation for the Warm Homes Local Grant Programme and the live bid for the Shared Prosperity Fund support be acknowledged. And we wish to reaffirm the decision to delegate the award of contracts for the installation supply partner and any additional delivery service providers for the Warm Homes Local Grant Programme to the Head of Service for Housing, Revenues and Customer Services. We wish to reaffirm the previous decision that approval be given, the addition of any discretionary terms for the scheme eligibility parameters will be delegated again to the Head of Service, and this actually is the important thing, that given the reduced funding provided by the DESNZ to alleviate fuel poverty and reduce carbon emissions, that funding of up to 1.1 million is identified from the General Reserve for the years 2025 to 2028 to partially backfill the gap that has emerged between the previous budget's potential spend and the Shared Prosperity Fund allocations. This has been driven by the fact that the anticipated grant was reduced in the most recent budget and there is a considerable shortfall. And the considerable shortfall builds up to an extremely considerable shortfall over those 3 years, and we wish to mitigate the reduction in delivering this grant work. I was very privileged to visit with Councillor Juned, a home where this work had been done, and the effect of having the work done was immediately apparent to the householder, and they were warmly grateful and appreciative for having that work done, and it was truly an impressive piece of work. The actual programme and... Oh, that's weird. My mic went, but you're back. Don't worry. The work was set up, the framework, the conditions, the capability of the contractors were very impressive, and we were very keen to preserve the work that they are doing and affect more residents live. And following various conversations we've had as administration and with my colleague, Councillor Curtis, one of our aims is to invest to save. And I think that applies very much here, but I think it also is invest to preserve or invest to protect our vulnerable residents. And so I am bringing this to you as a recommendation. I wholeheartedly endorse it. Not only do we support residents who are struggling in the current environment, but we are also meeting our requirements to meet the climate change and our environmental preservation, if you like, initiatives that we're doing. So on that, I think this is a very powerful programme, and I've been, as I say, really very lucky to see the results of it being implemented. So I would recommend it to Cabinet.
Thank you. And I personally would like to second those recommendations. I was disappointed by the government's, decision not to fund so much. But I have noted the figures about the number of people that are in fuel poverty, and that the fact that they are rising. We actually are above some of the records for England as a whole. 16.5% of households in fuel poverty, That was the latest data for 2022, but I do know that is rising, and a lot of it is outside the control of people because of things like the increase in fuel costs, the war in Ukraine, etc., etc. So that does need to continue to be supported. It is in line with our current housing strategy to make sure that we address cold and damp houses, that we make sure that people are kept in good health, and that fuel poverty should be something that is addressed. Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, well, certainly welcome the addition of £1.1 million into this fund. And it's a big issue, as you've been saying, and I note that in the report it says that there are 14,000 properties with poor performing EPCs in the district, so it's a big issue. I'm slightly confused in that the shortfall in funding from the new department, I can't remember the shortening the name for it now, but was £1.749 million, and you're putting £1.1 million of reserves into it. If all the money from the government had come in, it says here that the shortfall in retrofit of installations would be 166 houses. Will your extra funding, are you still committed to the full amount of retrofit housing, or is there a reduced number of houses, do you think?
Councillor Coles.
Thank you. I'm committed to doing what we can. Obviously, if Councillor Curtis's report continue to be as positive, I will be elbowing my way to the front of the line to increase that grant, but we work with what we have at the time. But it's certainly my intention, and I believe that the entire administration, to get as much work done as we possibly can fund.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. I had the benefit of a briefing by Nick Cadd on this, and wholeheartedly support this. This is a smart move to make up the shortfall, and I'm glad that the palatially upholstered sofa left to Councillor Curtis by the previous administration enables him to spend some of that, and hope that his continuing positive stewardship will allow further support in the future. No, really smart move. Back it all the way. Get some good outcomes from this.
Thank you. So we have four recommendations before us. Councillor Coles, you're proposing. I'm going to second that. And are we all in favour, or presumably no other questions beforehand? All in favour? Agreed. Thank you. Agreed. And moving on then to the Home Choice Plus review, pages 355 to 364, which again is in the portfolio of Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations for this paper that the activities to process the backlog be noted and endorsed. The activity to procure an IT system which supports the Council to effectively and efficiently discharge its duties be noted and endorsed. That the withdrawal from the Sub-Regional Home Choice Plus partnership be endorsed, and that the wider activity to ensure an efficient and effective housing register operation be noted. This paper has been backed by a really very large and detailed piece of work to examine where things stand and how they can be addressed, and what can be done to improve the service and results that our home choice residents see. We're broadly in line. It is an opportunity to look at policy, but we're broadly in line with the country. One of our, as I believe you mentioned, overview and scrutiny, is that we do have specific requirements from our system which it doesn't deliver. And one of the problems they have with an older IT system is we are essentially subsidizing the system with humans to do the work that a computer should be doing. And this is one of the reasons we're looking at upgrading the IT system. Again, to quote my colleague, Councillor Curtis, we invest to save. The investment in an up-to-date, reactive, helpful IT system will reduce the amount of manual processing that is required to be done by our staff, and our intelligent, useful humans can be used for intelligent, useful purpose, rather than compensating for a system that's not doing everything it should. I think that covers it. We want to get this work done, and we're bringing this paper here to get your approval and to move it forward and to get this work done, so that we have a better view of our waiting lists, that residents coming to the home choice system have a better experience, and that we can more effectively use the extremely good housing staff that we have within the council to make a more effective effect and have better results for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And you're proposing that. I'm happy to second that. Have we got any particular questions that I want to raise? Councillor Crump, I think you wanted to raise something, and Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Junid. Yes, Councillor Coles is right that poor Hannah had to come and speak to us on Wednesday. Thank you for that, and hopefully he hasn't put you off too much. Yeah, I certainly agree that with the implementation of the new system, it will make the process more efficient and reduce the amount of manual interventions, because whenever there's manual interventions, there's always possibility of mistakes. Not saying the new system will be foolproof, but we can also see the benefits potentially of AI as well in the system. We're also concerned about, obviously, the implementation timetable will still be mapped out, and then there's some potential it's allied to recruitment. So again, we need to make sure we recruit the right people, again, and that may delay the process. So, as I said before, we need to make sure we've got targets that are achievable in things, whether it's either producing reports to Cabinet or actually implementing new systems. So I think that is important, and I agree that the investment is not only to make sure it's fit for purpose, but it's also to improve efficiency. So I think that's, we fully endorse that, so we've got no issues about that. And we're happy to support the system. Again, we also need to make sure we can gather the data to help support vulnerable residents who, again, it was also noted as part of Hannah's presentation on Friday that we do. And we also accept that the potential benefits remaining with the current Home Choice partnership with, I think it's Wyfast and Bromsgrove, were found to be outweighed by the risk of staying with an outdated system. So we fully support the process. We will continue to monitor it, and unfortunately Hannah and Councillor Coles are potentially coming back on the 4th of March with another item, so we will be asking for a review of how the process is going. So thank you for that.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I had the benefit of a briefing from Hannah on this, and may I firstly say that my initial impression is that Hannah is a spectacular hire and is going to be a huge asset to this organisation. Really impressive, got some good ideas, and I think particularly this question around the IT system, which will enable us to have, for me, the key issue, much more clarity about the shape, size and profile of our housing waiting list, and that will enable us not only to process things more quickly, but to be able to understand what the need is at a much more granular level. And I think that's, I think there's everything to like about this report and the recommendations, but I did want to place on record my thanks for Hannah for spending far more time than she originally planned in walking me through this, and it was very, very useful. So thank you very much, Hannah.
And thank you, and again, thank you to the Head of Housing and Customer Services for that input. We've got a recommendation before us. Are you, Councillor Coles, you're proposing that recommendation? I'm happy to. Anybody else? I'm happy to second. I think I said that before. Any other questions? If not, then we go to the voting on that one. Are you all happy to support the recommendations I've written? Thank you. All agreed. Moving on then, we have issues arising from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. A lot has been raised, but are there any other issues that that you haven't raised?
No, there
up
aren't.
till now? No, thank you very much. Cabinet committees, none. Party en bloc items, and I haven't been given any recommendation that there is anything that needs to be considered there. So they are taken en bloc. Are we all happy to accept them en bloc? In which case, we move on to part F, other matters. And no urgent business has been notified to me. So that is the end of the Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance and for your patience this morning. Thank you.